No one plans for food to disappear. It doesn't vanish overnight. It thins out, it simplifies, it becomes fragile. First, choice disappears, then variety, then nutrition. What remains isn't hunger at first, it's dependence. Modern food systems are efficient, fast, and global, but they are also narrow. They rely on very few crops grown far away under very specific conditions. If that system collapsed, most of what fills supermarkets today would become useless almost immediately. Survival wouldn't come from technology or convenience. It would come from plants that can replace entire food groups, crops that feed people even when energy, transport, and precision agriculture are gone. Today, you're about to see which crops still matter when the system doesn't, and why these plants have always kept people alive when everything else failed. Potatoes are one of the rare crops capable of sustaining human life almost on their own. They provide dense calories, complex carbohydrates, potassium, vitamin C, and usable protein from a plant that grows entirely underground. This matters in collapse scenarios because underground crops are naturally protected from heat waves, wind, pests, and physical disruption. Potatoes deliver more calories per square meter than most grains and can prevent starvation even when diets become extremely limited. Their nutritional profile is not perfect, but it is strong enough to maintain basic health for long periods. Potatoes grow best in loose, well-drained soil, but they tolerate poor conditions better than many staple crops. They can be planted in cool climates, short growing seasons, and even marginal land where grains struggle. Because they reproduce vegetatively, farmers can replant directly from their own harvest without relying on external seed systems. Potatoes prefer moderate water, but their underground growth protects them from short droughts and temperature swings. This flexibility makes them suitable for temperate, cold, and even unstable climates where predictability no longer exists. The greatest advantage of potatoes is reliability. They store calories underground, regenerate easily, and continue producing food when surface crops fail. However, they are not without weaknesses. Potatoes are vulnerable to certain diseases, especially when grown without rotation, and they provide limited fat and certain micronutrients. Long-term survival still requires dietary diversity. Even so, as a foundation crop in collapse scenarios, potatoes are unmatched. They don't solve every nutritional problem, but they solve the most urgent one, keeping people alive when systems break. Wheat has fed human civilizations for thousands of years because it delivers stable, concentrated energy in a form that can be stored, transported, and processed long after harvest. It provides carbohydrates for calories, moderate protein, B vitamins, and minerals essential for daily labor. In survival scenarios, wheat's real strength is not taste or efficiency, but predictability. Once harvested and dried, wheat grain can remain edible for years. When food systems collapse, that long-term stability becomes more valuable than short-term abundance. Wheat grows best in well-drained soils with moderate fertility, but different varieties adapt to very different climates. Hard wheat tolerates cold winters, while emmer and other ancient types perform better in poor soils and low-input conditions. Wheat requires less water than rice or maize and can survive dry seasons if rainfall is well-timed. However, it depends on open land and seasonal planning. Unlike tubers, wheat exposes its food above ground, making harvest timing and weather more critical in unstable climates. Wheat's greatest advantage is storability. Grain can be saved, rationed, and ground when needed, creating food security across seasons. It also supports multiple food forms, from bread to porridge. Its weakness is dependence on processing. Wheat requires harvesting, drying, and milling to be fully usable. It also lacks fats and some key micronutrients, meaning wheat alone cannot sustain health indefinitely. Still, as a survival crop, wheat functions as a calorie backbone, anchoring diets when fresh food becomes unreliable. Maize is one of the most efficient calorie-producing crops ever domesticated. It delivers large amounts of carbohydrates, usable protein, and energy per square meter, which is why entire civilizations depended on it during prolonged crises. In survival scenarios, maize matters because it converts sunlight into food quickly and reliably. When harvested dry, corn stores well and can sustain people through long periods of scarcity. Its role is not dietary perfection, but volume, providing enough energy to keep populations alive when other crops fail. Maize prefers warm temperatures, full sunlight, and moderately fertile soil, but it adapts surprisingly well to diverse environments. With proper spacing and timing, it tolerates heat and intermittent drought better than many grains. However, maize is sensitive to frost, and requires a defined growing season. Unlike wheat, it demands more nutrients from the soil, making rotation important. In unstable climates, maize performs best when paired with legumes that restore soil fertility and reduce long-term exhaustion. The greatest advantage of maize is productivity. Few crops deliver more calories with less labor once established. It also supports multiple uses, from flour to animal feed. Its main weakness is nutritional balance. Maize lacks certain amino acids and micronutrients unless processed traditionally or combined with legumes. Alone, it can lead to deficiencies. Even so, as a survival crop, maize functions as an energy engine, not a complete diet, making it invaluable when paired intelligently with other foods. Beans are one of the most important survival crops because they solve a critical problem grains cannot: protein. They provide essential amino acids, fiber, iron, and minerals that prevent muscle loss and weakness during prolonged scarcity. In collapse scenarios, beans stabilize diets by complementing calorie-heavy foods like wheat or maize. Once dried, beans store for years without refrigeration. Their nutritional density allows small harvests to make a meaningful difference in survival outcomes. Beans grow in a wide range of climates, from temperate to warm regions, and tolerate relatively poor soils. Their unique advantage is nitrogen fixation, which improves soil fertility instead of depleting it. This makes beans especially valuable in low-input systems where fertilizers are unavailable. They require moderate water and are sensitive to frost, but short-season varieties mature quickly. In unstable environments, beans reduce long-term agricultural risk by strengthening both soil and diet. Beans' greatest strength is balance. They complement grains nutritionally and regenerate soil simultaneously. However, they require cooking, which means fuel and water are necessary. Raw beans are toxic and cannot be eaten directly. They also mature slower than some crops. Despite this, beans remain irreplaceable in survival systems. Without them, calorie-rich diets collapse nutritionally. With them, food systems gain resilience, protein security, and long-term sustainability. Lentils are among the fastest and most reliable protein crops in survival agriculture. They provide protein, iron, folate, and complex carbohydrates in a form that cooks quickly and digests easily. This matters in collapse scenarios where fuel and time are limited. Lentils stabilize energy levels and prevent micronutrient deficiencies during long food shortages. Their small size and density allow large nutritional returns from relatively small planting areas. Lentils perform well in cool to temperate climates and tolerate poor, dry soils better than many legumes. They require less water than beans and mature quickly, reducing exposure to weather extremes. Lentils thrive in low-input systems and benefit soil through nitrogen fixation. However, they do not tolerate waterlogging or heavy clay soils. Their adaptability makes them ideal for uncertain climates, where rainfall and temperature patterns are no longer predictable. The main advantage of lentils is efficiency. They deliver high nutrition with minimal water, short growing time, and low fuel requirements for cooking. Their limitation is yield. Lentils do not produce the same calorie volume as grains or tubers. They are not a foundation food, but a stabilizer. In survival systems, lentils strengthen diets and reduce risk, especially when paired with high-energy crops that provide bulk calories. Chickpeas play a unique role in survival diets by providing both protein and fat, two nutrients often missing during collapse. They supply slow-burning energy, fiber, iron, and essential minerals that support long-term health. Unlike many legumes, chickpeas contribute dietary fats, making meals more sustaining. In extreme scenarios, this dual role reduces dependence on animal products and oil crops, allowing plant-based systems to remain nutritionally functional. Chickpeas thrive in dry, warm climates where many crops struggle. They prefer well-drained soils and tolerate poor fertility better than most legumes. Chickpeas require little water once established and perform well in semi-arid regions. Their deep root systems access moisture unavailable to shallow-rooted plants. However, they are sensitive to excess humidity and heavy rainfall. In collapse scenarios, this drought tolerance makes chickpeas dependable, where irrigation systems fail and rainfall becomes unpredictable. The greatest advantage of chickpeas is nutritional efficiency. They provide protein, fats, and minerals in a single crop that stores well when dried. They also fix nitrogen, improving soil health. Their weakness is slow initial growth and sensitivity to prolonged wet conditions. Chickpeas also require cooking, demanding fuel and water. Despite these limitations, they remain one of the most complete plant-based survival foods available, especially in hot, dry environments. Hardy greens like kale protect survival diets from silent collapse. They provide vitamins A, C, and K, calcium, and antioxidants that prevent deficiency-related illness when calories alone are not enough. In crisis conditions, scurvy, weakness, and immune failure appear long before starvation. Kale grows repeatedly from the same plant, allowing continuous harvests. Its nutritional density makes it critical for maintaining health when diets become monotonous and nutritionally narrow. Kale tolerates cold, heat, poor soil, and neglect better than most leafy crops. It grows in temperate and cool climates, survives frost, and continues producing after partial damage. Kale requires moderate water, but adapts to irregular rainfall. It performs well in shallow soils and containers, making it viable even in urban or degraded environments. Its resilience allows food production where conventional vegetables quickly fail under stress. The advantage of kale is continuity. It produces fresh food repeatedly without replanting and fills critical nutritional gaps. However, it provides few calories and cannot sustain survival alone. Kale also becomes bitter under extreme heat and pest pressure. Despite this, its role is non-negotiable. In survival systems, greens prevent long-term health collapse, supporting bodies while calorie crops keep people alive. Onions contribute less through calories and more through system stability. They provide vitamins, sulfur compounds, and antimicrobial properties that support digestion and immunity. In survival scenarios, onions improve palatability of simple foods, increasing calorie intake indirectly. They also help preserve other foods and reduce spoilage. While onions alone cannot feed people, they strengthen survival diets by improving both nutrition and long-term food usability. Onions grow in a wide range of climates, from cool, temperate to warm regions, and tolerate poor soils with adequate drainage. They require moderate water early, then dry conditions for curing. Onions adapt well to small spaces and marginal land. Once harvested and dried, they store for months without refrigeration. This makes onions especially valuable when storage infrastructure and energy-dependent preservation methods are unavailable. Onions' main advantage is longevity. They store easily, resist spoilage, and improve nearly every meal. Their disadvantage is low caloric value and sensitivity to waterlogged soil. They also require curing time after harvest. Even so, onions play a strategic role. They don't keep people alive alone, but they make survival diets functional, safer, and sustainable over time. Garlic plays a critical role in survival systems not through calories, but through protection. It provides sulfur compounds with antimicrobial and antifungal properties that support immunity when medical systems fail. In collapse scenarios, infections and foodborne illness become deadly threats. Garlic helps preserve food, improve digestion, and reduce disease risk. Its nutritional contribution is small in volume, but strategic in impact, strengthening the body's defenses when diets are restricted and health resources disappear. Garlic grows in temperate and cool climates and tolerates poor soil as long as drainage is adequate. It requires minimal water and survives cold winters underground. Garlic is planted once and harvested months later with little maintenance. Because it reproduces clonally, farmers can replant indefinitely without external seed supply. This independence makes garlic extremely valuable in long-term collapse scenarios where commercial seed access no longer exists. Garlic's greatest advantage is resilience. It stores well, multiplies easily, and supports health without demanding resources. Its disadvantage is scale. Garlic cannot provide bulk nutrition or calories, and over-reliance causes dietary imbalance. Still, its presence dramatically improves survival odds. Garlic doesn't feed populations, but it protects them, making it a small crop with outsized strategic importance. Sunflowers are one of the most efficient plant-based sources of dietary fat, a nutrient often missing in collapsed diets. Their seeds provide calories, essential fatty acids, vitamin E, and protein. Fat is critical for hormone regulation, nutrient absorption, and long-term energy. Without it, survival diets fail quietly. Sunflowers convert sunlight into dense energy, making them indispensable when animal fats and industrial oils disappear. Sunflowers tolerate heat, drought, and poor soil better than many oil crops. They grow quickly, require minimal inputs, and perform well in open land. Their deep roots access moisture unavailable to shallow plants. However, they need full sunlight and sufficient space. Sunflowers are sensitive to prolonged cold and waterlogged soil. In unstable climates, they thrive best in warm, dry conditions where irrigation is unreliable. The advantage of sunflowers is fat independence. They provide oil without complex processing. Their weakness is vulnerability to pests and birds, and their seasonal nature. Seeds must be protected and harvested carefully. Despite this, sunflowers fill a critical nutritional gap. In survival systems, calories without fat lead to decline. Sunflowers prevent that failure. Oats excel in survival systems because they provide steady, slow-release energy. Rich in complex carbohydrates, fiber, and minerals, oats stabilize blood sugar and support endurance. In cold or stressful environments, this matters more than quick calories. Oats can be eaten whole as porridge without milling, reducing processing demands. Their simplicity makes them ideal when tools, fuel, and infrastructure are limited. Oats thrive in cool, damp climates where other grains fail. They tolerate poor drainage, low fertility, and unpredictable weather better than wheat. Oats grow quickly and mature reliably in short seasons. However, they do not tolerate extreme heat well. In collapse scenarios affecting temperate and northern regions, oats provide dependable grain production when conditions remain unstable. The strength of oats is reliability. They grow where others fail and require minimal processing. Their limitation is lower calorie density compared to wheat or maize. Oats also lack fats and certain micronutrients. Still, their ease of use and resilience make them a core survival grain, especially in cold or wet environments. Sweet potatoes are one of the most nutritionally efficient survival crops available. They deliver dense calories, complex carbohydrates, fiber, and exceptionally high levels of vitamin A, which prevents immune collapse and vision loss during prolonged scarcity. Both roots and leaves are edible, expanding food output from a single planting. In collapse scenarios, sweet potatoes reduce dependency on multiple crops by supplying energy and micronutrients simultaneously, making them a powerful foundation food. Sweet potatoes prefer warm climates, loose soil, and moderate water, but they tolerate drought better than many tubers once established. They grow well in poor soils where grains struggle and can be propagated from cuttings without seeds. Their sprawling vines protect soil from erosion and suppress weeds. However, they are sensitive to frost. In unstable climates, they perform best where growing seasons remain warm and extended. The main advantage of sweet potatoes is efficiency. They produce large yields with minimal inputs and provide nutrients often missing in survival diets. Their weakness is storage. Unlike potatoes, they do not overwinter well in cold soil and require curing to extend shelf life. Still, when used as a warm climate staple, sweet potatoes dramatically improve survival outcomes by combining calories, resilience, and micronutrient protection. Amaranth is one of the most complete plant foods ever cultivated. Its seeds provide protein with a near-complete amino acid profile, while its leaves supply vitamins, calcium, and iron. In survival systems, this dual-purpose nature is rare and valuable. Amaranth supports muscle maintenance, bone health, and energy production simultaneously. Few crops deliver this level of nutritional breadth in both grain and green form. Amaranth thrives in heat, drought, and poor soil where conventional grains fail. It grows rapidly, tolerates intense sunlight, and requires minimal water. The plant self-seeds easily, reducing long-term dependence on stored seed. Amaranth adapts well to marginal land and urban environments. Its main vulnerability is cold. In climates with frost, timing is critical, but in warm regions, it is exceptionally reliable. Amaranth's strength is completeness. It provides protein, micronutrients, and calories from a single plant. Its limitation is scale. Seed harvest and processing are labor-intensive, and yields per area are lower than maize. Despite this, amaranth functions as a nutritional stabilizer. In survival diets, it prevents deficiencies that cause slow collapse even when calories appear sufficient. Pumpkins and squash contribute survival value through versatility. Their flesh provides carbohydrates and vitamin A, while seeds deliver protein, fats, and minerals. Few crops offer such complete use. In collapse scenarios, squash reduces waste by turning every part of the harvest into food. Stored properly, whole fruits can last months without refrigeration, supplying calories and nutrients deep into winter. Squash grows in warm seasons, tolerates poor soil, and spreads aggressively, covering ground and suppressing weeds. It requires moderate water early, then survives dry conditions once established. Squash prefers space and sunlight, but adapts to marginal land. However, it is sensitive to frost and relies on pollination. In unstable environments, its productivity rewards successful early establishment. The advantage of squash is durability. Whole fruits store naturally, and seeds concentrate fat and protein. Its weakness is space and seasonality. Squash occupies large areas and produces in cycles rather than continuously. Still, as a storage crop, it plays a critical role. It bridges the gap between harvest and scarcity, keeping food available when fresh production stops. Chestnuts function as grain-producing trees, delivering carbohydrates, fiber, and minerals from perennial systems. Unlike most nuts, chestnuts are low in fat and high in starch, making them closer to bread than oil. In survival contexts, chestnut trees provide long-term food security without yearly replanting. Once established, they feed generations, producing calories annually even when annual crops fail. Chestnut trees prefer temperate climates with cold winters and warm summers. They grow best in well-drained, slightly acidic soils and tolerate poor fertility once established. Unlike annual crops, chestnuts require patience. Trees take years to mature, but then produce reliably for decades. They are drought-tolerant once rooted and resistant to many pests. In collapse scenarios, chestnuts represent delayed security, not immediate calories, but long-term independence from fragile yearly planting cycles. The greatest advantage of chestnuts is permanence. They transform land into a stable food system that doesn't depend on fuel, seed supply, or annual labor. However, they are not fast solutions. Chestnuts cannot address immediate hunger and require planting years in advance. They also need space and protection while young. Still, for long-term survival, few crops rival their ability to turn ecosystems into self-renewing sources of calories. Chestnuts change how survival is measured. They shift food security from seasons to generations. In historical collapses, societies with productive nut trees recovered faster because calories returned without rebuilding entire farming systems. Chestnuts do not replace annual crops, but they anchor them. When fields fail, trees remain. In a world of repeated disruption, perennial calorie sources redefine what resilience truly means. Across all these crops, a pattern emerges. Survival does not depend on maximum yield, perfect soil, or constant inputs. It depends on redundancy, simplicity, and nutrition density. The crops that keep people alive share traits modern agriculture avoids: slow growth, uneven shapes, underground storage, self-regeneration, and low dependence on external systems. These plants were never optimized for profit. They were optimized for failure. Modern food systems prioritize efficiency over resilience. They reduce diversity, centralize production, and depend on uninterrupted transport and energy. When these systems weaken, food scarcity appears not as starvation at first, but as malnutrition, dependency, and fragility. The crops in this list expose that weakness. They show that survival food is not about abundance. It is about choosing plants that continue feeding people when everything else stops working. If modern food systems collapsed, survival would not belong to the most advanced societies, but to the most prepared ones. The crops that matter are not exotic or futuristic. They already exist. They grow quietly, often ignored, waiting for conditions where resilience matters more than convenience. Choosing what to plant is choosing how dependent you remain. And in uncertain times, that choice decides who eats and who does not.